Oh my god, is that a spreadsheet? Why, yes it is. I know you love spreadsheets. So today I want to take a look at the player stats from the NAL 2021 season. So of course this will include stats from stage 1, 2, and 3. And the reason this looks like this with these colors and whatnot is because it was harnessed straight from CGG. I hope they don't mind. So, okay, we have the stage 1 here, we have stage 2 here, and then we have stage 3 here. And then also over here I have just all these stats added together, and I actually only did an all comprehensive thing for the top 15 players. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. Let's just start here with stage 1. And before we do, let's just cover what each of these columns are. So we have just the players here, and then we have the CGG ratings, which is just a number which is made from a proprietary formula that CGG uses, taking into account most of these other things to varying degrees. And then we have kills, deaths, and then the differential, so positive or negative, a certain number. Entry, kills, same thing as this, except for this is just the first kills of the round. The number of maps each player played. The cost, which is the percentage of rounds in which a player got a kill, planted the diffuser, survived the round, or was traded within a certain amount of time after dying. Kills per round, pretty self-explanatory. Survival, the percentage of round in which the player didn't die. 1vx's, this is the number of times the player was by themselves and won against any number of other players, so against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players. They clutched. Plants, disables, headshot percentage, main attacking operator, main defensive operator. Okay, and that's going to be true for stage 1, 2, and 3. The columns will correspond accordingly. Okay, so in this stage, it was Grixer that was the #1 player, and he ended up with the MVP, of course. Some people, I think, thought Hot and Cold deserved it, but I mean, I think the stats are definitive enough to give it to Grixer. So going down the line, of course, the rating decreases, but you'll also notice that it like roughly decreases with kills, like not strictly or anything, but I have to imagine, and the differential as well, I have to imagine that kill differential is one of the most important factors in the rating formula, the rating algorithm, and entry kills have some weight as well. As you can see, Foltz went insane on entry, and so did Rampy, plus 20 and plus 17 on the same team. That's pretty crazy. And then cost, it's sort of decreases as you go down, but it's a little bit more sporadic, I think. Like the highest one is what, vertical here, 75%, and he's down here at, I believe he's number 10. KPR also is one, it just more or less corresponds to the number of kills. Of course, players on different teams don't all play the same number of rounds, so it can vary a little bit there. But I mean, the highest KPR player by far is the #1 rated player, and then the second, also by a wide margin, is the second, so on and so forth. The third, it looks like, is actually down here. So what did bring Foltz down here? I guess the fact that he got more deaths than a lot of players, and his survival rate accordingly is kind of low, which brought him down, but very high KPR, best entry for the stage, so on and so forth. So I mean, there's just a lot of players. I don't feel the need to cover all of them. I just thought I'd point out a few things that I have up here. When I do the conglomeration of stats on the right there are only 36 players that played in all 3 stages, so keep that in mind. There's 9 slots that were sort of rotating throughout stage 1, 2, and 3. So I didn't record their stats over there if they played in fewer than all 3 stages, because it'd be skewed a little bit. So, okay, yeah, I mean, that's stage 1, like Rexen down here has a pretty high cost for how low he is. And Rexen's one of the interesting ones. He ends up being one of the highest rated players overall, but this stage doesn't make you think he would be. He went, a little bit positive on rating, exactly even on KD, slightly positive on entry, so on and so forth, but at quite excellent cost. So I guess the contributions he was making were pretty well spread out throughout the rounds, playing Ashe and Jaeger. And this is, I think it was it before the stage when they did the Ashe change with the R4C and her gadget having fewer charges, went up to 3 and then went back down to 2. And then also she lost her stuns, which I don't remember actually if that was at the same time as the gadget. It might have been. But anyways, Ashe sort of still sees some play here, but I think it falls off after this stage. So maybe it was after the stage, because there is a decent number of Ashe players, it looks like here. Anyways, we'll move on to stage 2. So, right, stage 2, and I'm gonna just kind of go through this quickly because it's much more interesting to look at the overall stats than the individual stage stats. So Hot and Cold up at the top here, but tied in rating with Rexen. I guess either Hot and Cold's rating is slightly higher, or like it's alphabetical. I don't know. You know, of course the number doesn't go past the 2 digits past the decimal. So Hot and Cold is pretty well here. I mean, plus 23. Rexon got more, but also higher KPR. Just Hot and Cold played far fewer rounds because a lot of the game Space Station was winning very quickly, and then also they had a forfeit game against Beast Coast, so they would have played at least 7 more rounds if they had actually played that game. And I mean, he would have got more kills, and the KPR would have been adjusted. Pretty low survival rate though, all things considered. There's some that are lower, of course, especially once you get down here. But in terms of the players that are pretty high up here, one of the absolute lowest in the top. I mean, top lowest in like top 15 or so. Maybe this is about 15, I don't know, 12, whatever it is. I don't really want to count it. And what else is notable here? Very high cost from J90. This might be the highest over the course of all 3 stages, because I think that's higher than, I guess Vertical also has 77% here. Oh, oh no, it's Kansan, 78% here. There's a lot of really high cost in stage 3 for some reason. If back in stage 1, there was, you know, the 175 and then none at 74. I guess there's the 173, it looks like. And then it goes up a little bit here. There's more greener shades, I suppose, here, and then even more once you get down here. Kind of curious. And right, Hot and Cold was excellent this stage, and yeah, I guess he just got better and better each stage. 1.23 rating, 1.33 rating, and then ends up with a 1.48 rating in stage 3. Incredible. Truly hot, never cold indeed. Okay, so what else to point out here? This is a good stage for Hyper when he didn't always have excellent stages. He used to like always do really, really well, and I don't think he had a like terrible stage this year, but maybe not quite up to his standards. And okay, so Chala pretty high here considering Flank Watch. There were a couple occurrences of this, right, where the Flank Watch was really high. Chala here, I think Eclipse still playing Nomanity's very high here. Shuttle playing Lion, which also generally is Flank Watch, very high. So we saw several occurrences of that. I think that's I don't know, maybe it's just a bit of a novelty, or maybe there's a reason for that trend. Teams are just very good at forcing the enemy teams to flank, and then also very good at punishing it. And of course, when you're playing things like Nomad and Lion, it certainly helps to do so. And okay, we'll just look at stage 3 really quick here. Hot and Cold, by far the best player. Like 0.11 margin is massive. It was a 0.1 margin in the first stage between Grixer and Hot and Cold, and then exactly even between Hot and Cold and Rexon. And then after that, I guess a 0.04. So pretty small margin there. And then yeah, massive 0.11. And then even though a Vertical didn't do well, I mean, it would have been a 0.24 difference. That would have been insane. And it is insane regardless of how Vertical did or not, because his stats were also insane. I mean, Hot and Cold over a 2.0 KD, 9.0 entry KD, really good cost, astronomical KPR, quite excellent. And then we saw some other players popping off, both Rexon and Grixer. I think Grixer was higher than Rexon for like the entire stage, and then just in the last play day or two, Rexon overtook him slightly. Vertical bossed up this stage because he did pretty poorly in this stage. He's all the way, no, wait. Yeah, where is he? All the way down here. Very rough stage for Vertical, and he went from one of the worst players. This is like, he's like bottom 1, he's like bottom 11 or something. Because I think there's actually 47 players in this stage because there's some mid-stage substitutions going on. Yeah, and then he, Vertical, yeah, big boss up here. Went from like 37th to 2nd, which is, I think, it's got to be the best improvement in back-to-back stages of at least this year in the NAL, maybe like ever, hard to say. You know, Rampy's still very high. You know, a lot of, you know, Fultz, J90, a lot of these players were pretty consistently high. And okay, so after, and I'll scroll down actually so you can see all of this in case I didn't show it properly. So I mean, if you care to pause it and take a look at all this, of course, it's also on CGG if you want to look at it in that fashion. And then that's the end. Bozo, bottom rated player all 3 stages. That's rough, buddy. That's really rough. Okay, let's move over here and take a look at this. So, okay, ooh, big white screen, scary, I know, hurts my eyes too. Not really, I got these fancy glasses, spare my eyes. Okay, so, so keep in mind here that the KD is going to be accurate because it's just strict numbers, but the rating, I just averaged the 3 because I don't have access to CGG's proprietary formula, so I don't actually know what it would be based on all of these things summed up. So it's probably around what each player has, but some stages are going to be weighted more than others incorrectly because I'm just taking the 3 formulas and they should have a different weight to them based on like the number of rounds players played and stuff. But Keep in mind it's fairly accurate, but it might affect the order. I mean, Hot and Cold's clearly still going to be number 1, but I mean, like, maybe Rampy should be above Fultz, or, you know, maybe Hyper should be above J9O. But yeah, just keep that in mind. KD, it will be accurate, so will this. Cost should be accurate the way I did it, and KPR as well. And then rounds, the way I found rounds, which I could have done it another way, but I just looked at the number of kills and divided it by their KPR, and that just gives you the number of rounds. Sometimes the rounding is a little bit weird, but I double checked it with other players, so it should be correct. Okay, and then this is just like pretty frivolous stuff. I just like it. You already have an established ranking based on the rating, but I just wanted to do this average ranking to see how well it corresponded to the actual rating ranking. And as you can see, like it corresponds pretty well. I mean, Hot and Cold 1, and then the numbers should decrease. The lower number is better. Of course, 1, 4, 7, and it just keeps going up. But there's some occurrences where it goes back down, 12 to 10, 16 to 13, etc. And then the rank range is just how far apart their worst and best performances are. So Hot and Cold, range of 1, he was 1, 1, and 2. So, you know, 2 minus 1 is 1. And then you have like vertical, of course, astronomical number here, 35. I mean, it could only get up to, I guess, a 46 if you got first place one stage and 47th in that stage that had 47 players in it. Yeah, so but 2 to 35, and so generally a low number is better, I guess. It's good to be consistent, but like Fozo has technically it's not going to be a number of 0 because again, not all 3 state, some state in the one stage there was more than 45 players, but if I was just recording it as places away from the bottom, it'd be a 0, and you know, not too hot. Very unfortunate. Eclipse pretty high, and Eclipse played a variety of roles over the course of the year. He played. Is this different? Is this font different? Is why? Hold up, I gotta change that. That was outlandish. Okay, so yeah, Eclipse played Flank Watch and Entry Soft Breach, or well, like Entry Sledge, and he also played Hard Breach at the end of the stage. So he was all over the place, and I guess his where is he? His range here reflects it where you got. And this is curious that this was when he was playing the Flank Watch, and this is when he was playing the Entry, and this is partially Entry, but a lot of Hard Breach. Anyways, okay. So moving down the line, Hot and Cold, Grixer, Rexen, Fultz, Rampy, J9O, Hyper, Iconic, Vertical, Achieved, Eclipse, NJR, Yeti, Bosco, Laxing are the top 15 players. I meant to write down how many players of each team there are, but I suppose there's no Mirage players up here unless you count Hot and Cold, who was on Mirage for the one stage, but really is a Space Station player at this point. There are, what, 3 Sonics players. There are 4 Space Station players, Hot and Cold, and Rampy, and Fultz, and Bosco, and of course Skies and Thinking Nade aren't on here because they both had at least one stage in which they did not play. And then we have, what, 3 Dark Zero players, NJR, Eclipse, and Hyper. And then we have, I think, 2 Astralis players, J9O and Iconic, and then just 1 TSM player. Is that to everybody? I think I talked about everybody. Yeah. So again, yeah, no Exit players, no Beast Coast players, no Mirage players. And then each other team has at least 1. And one team has 4, which is very crazy. Thinking Nade would be pretty high. I guess I'm curious about that. Let me just look. Thinking Nade 1.05, and what's his other rating? 1.04. So, I mean, if I was doing all of them, like, I mean, yeah, he'd be like right here. I guess I'd probably round it to 1.05. So he'd be just... He'd be right there, and then they'd have 5 players. Okay, and well, actually, since I'm just looking, anyways, what was Skies? Did he didn't get a 1.05, did he? Well, oh, he did 1.06. So he didn't play in this stage, but he did play in this stage, and I guess the 0.98 would bring him down below the threshold there. That was when he was on Dark Zero, but he didn't play in stage 2, of course. So okay. I noticed even more so here the trend of kills being seemingly the most important factor for the formula. Like, it's not, again, strictly decreasing. Like, there's a pretty big increase here, but if you're just looking at the differential, it's pretty close to decrease. Like, it only goes up by 1 here, and then it goes up by like 5 here, and then it gets a little bit weird down here. There's some ups and downs, but again, yeah, like kills and kill differentials, it's just seemingly one of the most important factors for determining the CGG rating. Number of rounds played. The players from the same team are going to have the same number here, except for, I mean, Hot and Cold was on 2 different teams, so he won't have the same number as the Space Station guys. I guess in stage 1, Mirage played 5 fewer rounds than Space Station did. KPR 1.07, like, that's out of this world. I saw Dezichu was posting a bunch of like top stats from globally, I guess, and he was talking about the players that have over 100 kills in each stage. But I mean, it's not even fair though, right? Because the other regions are playing more games. I don't know how many games APAC plays, but LATAM and Europe both play 9 games, and this region only gets 8 games. Unfortunate. So I guess it's okay, right? So he had 260 kills. I mean, if you got 100 kills each stage, you'd have 300 plus kills. So he would need 41 more kills, and that's over the course of actually 4 games, not 3, because there'd be 1 additional game per stage, and then also if they had played that Beast Coast game, also keep in mind they had a forfeit. So I mean, 41 kills in 40 games. Or sorry, in 4 games, he could have done it. I mean, average of like 10.25 kills per game. It's pretty high, like it's pretty high threshold. But I mean, if anybody could do it, it's gotta be hot and cold, right? Entry, I mean, out of this world, over 2.5 ratio, plus 32, second highest cost overall after just looks like after just Rexen, and very tight range. Okay, Grixer. I think clearly the second best player, even though Rexen was higher than him in 2 of the stages. Grixer was so much higher than Rexen was in the first stage. It was a difference of like, what, 0.28 or something? It was a difference around 0.3 rating, and then it was only a slight dip, and then Rexen was only like a little bit better than Grixer in the other 2 stages. Okay, so Hot and Cold and Grixer actually got the same number of kills, but of course, Sonics played 30 more rounds than Hot and Cold did, so you have to take that into account. And it is taken into account here with the different KPRs. Still very good on entry, better than a 1.5 ratio. Still impressive. Still a great player. Rexen, he would have been, I mean, he'd be much higher if he'd popped off the first stage like he did the other 2 stages. But because of a mediocre first stage, he is only in 3rd place here. Plus 63 on kills, plus 9 on entry. Highest cost in the league overall. Still a really solid KPR. If he'd been, up in these numbers, he'd be probably above Grixer. Fultz, maybe his performance hasn't been his absolute hottest in the last 2 stages, but I mean, it's still quite excellent. Like, actually first stage. Oh no, that's Rexen. I guess second stage was actually his best stage, but I think at stage 2 and 3, Hot and Cold was like taking all the glory from Space Station, so it was a little bit harder to notice other players. When Fultz was extremely impressive in stage 1, again with that plus 20 on entry or whatever. So yeah, very solid. One of the lowest ranges, I guess, just the second lowest of the top 15 behind Hot and Cold. And Fultz, I think it's just one of the absolute best players in the league, no doubt, and then also just one of the best players in the world. Entry KD close to a 2.0, a plus 23, nothing to scoff at. Again, one of the highest costs. There are several 70% here actually, but it still puts him top 10 on cost, and he's tied with several of those. And these numbers are actually, I mean, they're rounded, of course. Like Fultz might have a higher cost than actually all the other 70%, but third highest KPR, and yeah, not much more to say. Just incredible stats. And then Rampy just barely behind him. Noticeably fewer number of kills, but also noticeably fewer number of deaths. Similar kind of differential, 8 fewer for Rampy over the course of 23 games. Almost 2.0 here, quite high cost, KPR, good, just solid as well. He has a little bit higher range, but just barely one time going outside of the top 10. Very impressive performance. J90. I think he shocked everybody because I don't think so the first time he played in T1, he was subbing in for on the Sonics. It was him and Lags, who was a former teammate of his. They were subbing in for Slebin and Gompy while they were getting their visa situation figured out. And Lags did pretty poorly, if I remember, and I don't think J90 did especially hot either. And then after this, he gets picked up by Disrupt, now Astralis, and this year he was just incredible. I mean, 12, 4, and 9, and a lot of this isn't even on like primary frag roles. He plays some support, some flex, but I suppose in some regard at this point he sort of is playing frag role. That's what Sledge is, it seems, anymore. And an average rank of 8. I mean, as you can see, one of the lower numbers here. Just quite good overall. Hyper, maybe a little bit lower than you'd expect. He used to be first place like every stage, or at least like really, really high. And it was pretty high. Of course, he got a 3rd place, but then a 13 and a 21, I think, is perhaps a little bit lackluster for him. Dark Zero has gone through some restructuring, and they picked up NJR for Hot and Cold, who, I mean, Hot and Cold didn't seem like a fraggy player back then, but it turns out that was like the worst player drop of all time. If only you put him on another role. and he'd done what he did on Mirage's base station. Could have turned Dark Zero around right there without needing to change your actual roster at all, just the structure of it, I suppose. But anyways, yeah, now they have Pamzu, they have NJR, so pretty frag competent players. Not that Canadian and Eclipse aren't, but and then also putting Eclipse temporarily on more frag heavy roles. Eclipse has done it all, I guess. I mean, all the different roles he played. Like back in the day, I think he was on like entry or whatever, and now he's played. So yeah, I think he's played. Maybe he was on Ash, not 100%. There was one stage where Eclipse put up like the best numbers of all time at probably season 6, I think, or 7. So yeah, assuming he played like Ash or something back then. So he's played Sledge, he's played Nomad, he's played Laban and Thermite, all this stuff. Okay, I had to pause for a second. There's a really, really loud truck going by outside, and I wasn't sure if the mic was going to pick it up. Okay, yeah, so I was talking about Eclipse, but really I was meaning to talk about Hyper. Still very good, of course. I mean, and I'm going to just keep saying that over and over because we are, of course, just looking at the best rated players overall, so of course their performances are all going to be good. But, I mean, not the best on entry. Like, +8 is still good, but, you know, I mean, it's better than most of the ones below him, but it's not anything mega spectacular like the ones up here. I guess these 4 in particular. But yeah, still good. Okay, Iconic. So I was surprised he was this high because he went quiet a little bit. He was, I mean, I guess maybe not on stage. He seems pretty loud, but I think last year he was making a lot of things happen. And this year, I mean, still good. 11, 6, 14. Still pretty high, but I think maybe a little bit less notable than he had been prior, but still. And part of that might be because his team hasn't been doing too hot in the last 2 stages, getting 5th place and 7th place, and also J90 sort of maybe overshadowing him a bit, ending up above him for sure, but not by too much, by 0.02. +41 here. He's one of the only players on here with a negative entry, which is curious. He played a lot of entry. And then I guess NJR and Yeti as well, and everyone else is positive. But I guess it didn't detract from his stats too much. Also, his cost isn't that impressive, so I guess what put him up here? His kill differential, again, being very important, and just a high KPR. And do keep in mind, of course, I didn't translate every stat from CGG over here. Like, I don't have plants, and I don't have diffuses and survival rates and stuff. I did cherry pick a little bit partially to make it easier on myself, but then also these are generally the stats that are making them be this high for the most. Like, you know, your slayers, your fraggers, your entry players, whatever, are usually the one up here. So I thought that these stats more or less sufficiently covered why explained the high rating. Okay, so what else was I saying? Iconic. Yeah, we'll move on. Vertical. He'd be much higher, of course, if he didn't have an abysmal second stage. Top 10, I think quietly too. It was like a 1.1 rating that stage. So I guess because his rating was so high in this stage, it pulled him above both of these ratings. And this one's like a 0.88 or something. Pretty low considering the roles he plays. And yeah, so, but again, it's sort of similar to Rexen, but to an even heavier extent. He'd be much higher if he could have had even a mediocre stage, but if he could have had another top 10 stage like these two, he'd be a lot higher. But still, +36, and his entry, I guess, was pretty bad because his entry was phenomenal in the last stage, and he's barely at a +4, but still very high cost. And moving on to achieved, I believe the only TSM player on here, Merc, is still positive. So is Bolo and Chala. Oh, actually, all of them are. Well, I guess these aren't technically positive; they're even or whatever. But at least a 1.0, everyone for TSM. But the rest of them are just barely missing out on this top 15 mark, which I sort of just arbitrarily chose. But okay, achieved, yeah, popped off in stages 1 and 3, and kind of a lackluster performance in stage 2, but not that big of a deal, I'd say, because this was TSM's best stage. They got what, 5th place, and 2nd place. So that's really weird to say. Way back when, TSM was like literally 2nd place always, if not 1st place at a point. But yeah, they're usually the 2nd place behind Space Station in NA. And now double 5th place finishes is kind of rough. I guess it wasn't as rough in the first stage because there was no major. So they did not fail to keep up appearances or whatever, but now they have, in that they lost their spot to technically Dark Zero, technically Auction, whichever one you want to say, but no fault of Achieves, it would seem. yeah, I don't know what caused him to do this poorly this stage. I guess maybe just his teammates were overshadowing him because, again, this was quite a good stage for TSM. They were the second best team after only the ever-dominant Space Station. But part of it, possibly going from this 29 to the 6, could be because he switched off of IGL. He generally played frag-heavy roles, entry roles, whatever, but now I believe Chala at some point during the stage took over primary IGL, which, as far as I understand, was achieved before, so that could, take some of the weight off your shoulders, make you just focus on your gameplay a little bit less when somebody else is IGLing and worrying about the rest of the team. And okay, Eclipse, I talked about a little bit before. Still quite good stats considering he played all these different roles. He was fairly successful on all of them. I think he went, I'm curious. He went positive on every stage, right? Even, actually, I won't look at it. I'll spare you guys the minute and a half I'm going to spend looking at it. Okay. But yeah, good stats regardless. Just a little bit positive in each of these, but a high cost and, like fairly consistent, a little bit consistent between these two, but then 3 falling down to these. And yeah, if you have an opinion on it, like I'd be really curious to hear why you guys think this whole flank watch thing was a case with Shuttle and Chala and Eclipse putting up really good ratings when playing the flank watch role in stages 1 and 2. Let me know if you have an opinion on that. Then we have NJR, who has been increasingly highly rated, and he's one of the only players to just strictly get better. I guess Hot and Cold didn't strictly get better, but he did not get worse. I mean, 1-to-1. Of course, you can't get better than first place, but he did get a higher rating, so he did improve. Yeah, might be the only one here. Sure, yeah, maybe. Anyways, 18 to 16 to 11. I think back here he was playing some entry, playing some Yana and whatnot, and I guess he just maybe wasn't fitting in with Dark Hero that well just yet. And then I think here, what operators was he playing actually? I will take a look at this one. NJR was playing Jackal and Smoke, so still, I mean, on defense Smoke, of course, just like the support operator, but Jackal on attack. So I mean, interesting role. Not a lot of players are Jackal primary players, I guess. It's just not that common of an operator, but Dark Zero seemed to favor it. And then pretty high up here even, and actually my curiosity has gotten the best of me. I will take a glance. What was he playing here? He was playing Sledge and Smoke. So yeah, now playing the Sledge Buck roll, which is usually just Sledge, but also a fragging roll for one reason or another. They just frag with them. I guess like it's an easy to use gun because it's got high damage, low rate of fire. Low rate of fire doesn't technically help, but it makes your mag last longer, 30 round mag, which is more than like Yana's gun has, and so on and so forth. But then also it's the character with the frags. It's the character that you need to get in position first to start opening stuff, but it's also a little bit risky to risk it because it's one of the most important gadgets for a lot of objectives. But anyways, okay, moving on to Yeti. Plus 23, so we're getting a little bit lower here. Some of the really high numbers are up here, of course, but then we are getting into the 20s now. One of the players to go negative on entry, and I guess the worst player on entry in the top 15 here, but only a -3, nothing too severe. And it was partially, especially hampered by that very last game, or no, was it their second to last game? That Mirage game when he was getting eaten alive on entry. And okay, just I mean good numbers overall, like, and especially considering the fact that Yeti plays a lot of not like hard support, but he'll play like the secondary hard breach, so like Maverick, which is a very frag competent operator. Not only does it have frag grenades, but it also has like a fairly high rate of fire gun with, I don't know, it's not like the most unruly recoil, but it's not like the best either. But it's got an angled grip, it's got a 1.5, he's a 3-speed, so on and so forth. And on defense, playing a lot of roam, which I think does certainly help with the rating, but you do have to note, of course, that there are 3 Sonics players in the top 15 here, and Kansan is just down here at number 17, just missing out. I guess he's just in the top half of that because, again, this was 36 players that have played in all 3 stages, and he's 17 here, so 18 through 1 would be the top half. Everything down to Bolo, I suppose. And, okay, so, yeah, just good performances from Yeti. It seems I can imagine that he has a little bit higher impact in the server than he does in the numbers, but his numbers are still impressive, so good all around. Bosco, the perennial support player for Space Station, and I guess now being replaced a bit by Skies in that regard. What did Bosco play on defense in stage 3? Because did Skies just mostly take over the smoke roll. Where is he? Where's Skies? Skies is playing mute, and Bosco is where? Bosco playing. Okay, he still played the smoke on defense, so still playing support there. But then on attack, I think the hard breach is now taken over by Skies. But I think technically before, thinking Nate had been was originally on flank watch, and then Bosco was playing some hard breach. I think it's stage 2 because of course it was Canadian before, and then it was Luke, and then anyway, and then they switched roles, put Bosco onto flank watch and Thinking Nate onto hard breach, and then they replaced Skies. Okay, whatever, bunch of history. But anyways, Bosco on slightly less supporting roles, but still of course his infamous smoke, one of the best smoke players certainly in the world, I'd say, and went +6 on entry. I think he was +2 all 3 stages. And not crazy high numbers or anything, because of course you don't anticipate the roles that he plays to encounter a lot of entry duels, especially the smoke. And actually I should have looked at it when I was already here, but what did he play on attack? It was the sledge. So now we have him on the sledge, which Hot and Cold had played some amount at some point, but I guess Bosco on sledge, Hot and Cold a lot of Maverick, and then Rampy and Volts on, I don't know, some Yana, Zofia type stuff, and then Thermite, Habana, Reserve Force guys, that sort of thing going on. And then we have Laxing, who just barely makes it into, hang on, I'm gonna pause, hang on. The same truck just went by again, I don't know why, okay. So, right, so the last player we have here is Laxing, who has been doing, I'd say, a little bit worse than he generally does. I'd say in the past, he's been one of the most consistently well-performing players in the NAL, and of course getting top 15 is still good, and like he's around the same range, but 25 is a bit lackluster. But I suppose with the restructuring of his team, and especially in this stage with vertical popping off, you don't need to do quite as much in these 2 stages. I mean, he was very close in rank, of course, 13 and 14, but the team varied very wildly in its placement. First place in this stage and 6th place in this stage, so it was not Laxing that was changing, but the team around him, I suppose. And then back to 2nd place here, but now Laxing is doing a little bit worse. But I mean, I don't think you mind doing a little bit worse if your team is doing a lot better. So okay, that's all the players there. And yeah, I didn't take the time to do it for the players below here. I will show their ratings here. This shows everybody except for there's Fozo, the lowest rated player in all 3 stages, unfortunately, and perhaps a little bit of an outlier down here because like, he's not even a hard support player, right? He played like a lot of flank watch and stuff, which some other players were very successful on. But then we have support IGL here. We have like a hard support here for most of it. We have an IGL, entry IGL, but a little bit lower. Filthy, I don't even know what his role is technically, but support-ish sort of stuff. Sippin is down here low. And of course, this is just build up by mostly a few support players from other teams, but it's mostly just Mirage, Beast Coast, and Xset players. I mean, if you keep going, we have Mirage, and then Yaga pretty low here, though. And we have Beast Coast, Mirage, Xset, and now Mirage. We have Mirage, Xset. And then we have Shuttle and Kino, but at this point, we're getting right around that 1.0 rating. So, okay, this video is probably mega long. I don't actually know how long it is because I had the pauses in there. But, I mean, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any suggestions for similar videos to this. I'm trying to just crank out these stat videos for the NAL Stage 3 because I think people are going to lose interest once we get into the Sweden Major. So I'll start doing coverage of that to some extent once that rolls around. With all of that being said, I will catch you in the next video.